What if Gojo wasn't content with just being the strongest sorcerer of the modern era? What if he pushed his limits even further? In this video, we'll be exploring the mind-blowing possibilities of Gojo reaching his full potential and becoming the strongest of all time. Hey guys, it's Rigo here, and you're probably thinking, but Gojo already hit his peak. Well, I'm here to tell you that I disagree. If we dive deep into the potential of the cursed energy system, it's clear that Gojo's power didn't even reach half of what it could if he truly was set up to be the strongest of all time. So in today's video, we'll be answering the question, what if Gojo reaches his full potential? So you might want to stick around to see how Gojo could have surpassed not only Sukuna, but set up the bar so high that it could never be surpassed again. But first, you're probably wondering what I'm yapping about. Let me first prove that Gojo never reached his full power. Comparing Gojo to other characters that were considered the strongest, we can say that to keep growing stronger it's just a matter of keep pushing yourself again and again against stronger and stronger enemies. Kashimo was the strongest of his time, but he never had his awakening moment. He never had a do or die moment that pushed him to use and possibly even master his technique, and thus hungered for someone like Sukuna to teach him what he could never learn on its own. In other words, he was never Tojit. Meanwhile, at the other end of the spectrum, we can assume that, due to the era he was born in, Sukuna's level was getting Tojit at least once a week. In other words, he needed to keep pushing himself more and more against death, over and over again. This gave him the most in-depth comprehension of the Jujutsu system, allowing him to basically cheat his way out of any situation. And while Gojo got Tojit once, that was it. Once he became the strongest, there was no reason to keep pushing the limits of his power any longer. In other words, the top made him go stale. There is also the fact that Gojo mentally handicapped himself. As much as he boasted about being the strongest, at the end of the day what he wanted was to not be alone. So if he grew even more than he already did, he would just keep isolating himself. So today we are going to analyze how strong Gojo would have been if the modern era was a much more dangerous place, with opponents that could have made him face death over and over again. And by the way, what are we going to do is not as simple as just increasing his stats, as the Jujutsu system allows various ways to grow in unexpected ways. By looking at different ways that other characters can use their cursed energy, we can see how Gojo could keep evolving to a calamity that surpasses even the special grade class. So let's start simple. At the most base level, Gojo could have quite literally become immortal. I'm not joking. By looking at our resident gambling man's jackpot, we know that Hakari's automatic RCT is caused by the sheer amount of cursed energy he has. So, theoretically, automatic RCT is a phenomenon that can be reached by anyone with enough cursed energy. That is easier said than done though. Even characters like Yuta or even Sukuna who have more cursed energy than Gojo still can pull off this feat. Lucky for Satoru Gojo, he is Satoru Gojo. His brain is already on RCT 24/7, so what he could do is just expand his target to more than his brain. This will probably be weaker than Hakari's automatic RCT and much more slower, but it still means that he could keep up fighting without having to worry about injuries. But if he truly wanted to surpass Hakari, he probably would need to drop Infinity altogether. This might sound strange to you, but now he has an option on the rare case that someone can break through the barrier of endless space. And if you want endless Jujutsu content delivered straight to your feed, then remember to subscribe, as that creates a special barrier that allows a sure hit of quality Jujutsu content. And speaking of barriers, I found it especially interesting how Gojo can extremely expand the barrier that the Limitless is placed on, without any complication. This led me to the idea that, if he can expand his barrier to a large enough area and then apply Infinity to it, he could quite literally slow everything down to the point of immobilizing it. In other words, Gojo could quite literally stop time. This ability, however, still has its drawbacks, as expanding the barrier would leave Gojo open to counterattacks if he's not ready, as it will leave him in a similar state to Domain Burnout, and besides, Domain Amplification would still be a viable counter to this, so Sukuna could still be a problem, but as a wise man once said, you should learn from your enemies. Taking a hint from our favorite four-armed freak and his favorite nephew, we can now evolve Gojo's basic techniques through the use of binding vows. By applying the concept of restricting their target, we get Gojo's new abilities, Deep Blue and Bright Red. They are like blue and red, but they are more for utility than damage, as by restricting their targets they would increase the power over set targets. For example, if your enemy is trying to keep his distance, then Gojo could use Deep Blue to force him to approach, or if he's a weapon fighter, then using Bright Red could force the weapon to be sent flying away. And because we know Gojo likes mixing them colors, by combining the two we would get intense purple. Now, despite being a new variation of purple, this one isn't too strong, but rather is more of an utility move meant to disrupt opponents by forcing them to be both and repel and sucked in at the same time. But due to the different vows that it can only be destroyed quite easily. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't like this one too much, so I'll let you guys decide what's the next evolution of purple should be in the comments below. But what if instead of versatility, you just wanted raw power? In that case, through the magic of maximum output and a binding vow, that's how we get blue and red's evolution, black and white. And they aren't simply a stronger blue and red, but these are exponentially more powerful, but also a lot more volatile. They aren't just being powered by cursed energy, but also by a bounding vow that eliminates the natural defenses that sorcerers have against their own curse technique. In other words, they would also affect Gojo, and because of the sheer amount of cursed energy being poured into it, let's just state that being caught by one would leave you in a worse state than how Gojo was after that tactical nuke in Shinjuku. And at last, we have his domain, and unlike what we were told at the beginning of the story, a domain is not a pinnacle, as you can still climb much higher. Gojo's next step is obviously to unlock an open domain, and realistically speaking, Gojo was probably on the verge of unlocking it. As we saw, he could quite easily manipulate his domain coordinates on the fly. But I don't want to end this video on a boring note, so let me just show you how Gojo's new ultimate move. Something so powerful and dangerous that can only be used in a closed domain. As stated before, black and white are really strong. Too strong. Perhaps too much strong. And you can only imagine what would happen if we combine them both. By combining maximum technique black and maximum reversal white, we get the strongest possible attack in JJK, Hollow Zero. Now, this attack is like Hollow Purple on Super Saiyan 4, an attack so strong that it destroys space itself, in which not even his user is spared from its wrath. Unlike Purple, this attack destroys space on a subatomic level, meaning that there is no defense against it, no reinforcement, no domain amplification, no RCT, not even adaptation can protect you from it. Imagine what it'd be like to be hit with Yoro's perfect spear on crack, or even the world-cutting slash by the power of 1,000. That is why it can only be used inside a closed domain, otherwise it would just literally do irreplaceable damage to Earth, or even destroy it altogether. And that's why Gojo wasn't even close to its full potential. Seeing the whole of the Jujutsu system and seeing all the different ways characters can use it and abuse it really shows you how further Gojo still could go. And to top this off, there is still more ways Gojo could get stronger. Just imagine if he imbued his CT into a curse tool, or if he just got a Shikigami, I don't know. Let me know what other ways you could see Gojo grow even stronger in the comments below.